Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we are coming together for the continuation of the Bhagavad Gita. Before doing that, let's give us some context where we are. Why is the structure of the Bhagavad Gita the way that it is? Because there's a purpose behind it. So every book has a structure. If the book is written intelligently, that structure will not go into waste. That structure is there, made on purpose. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is based on the Vedas, which is considered the source of knowledge, universal knowledge. So let's start by asking or looking into the Vedas, and then we will contrast it with the Bhagavad Gita. The Vedas is divided into, usually we'll say 2 sections, but it's actually divided into more specifically 3 sections. The first section of the Veda is the Karma Kanda section. Karma Kanda section is generally interpreted as the ritualistic section. It's much more than ritualistic. When we say ritualistic, what we mean is physical activities specifically, or most prominently, by whose use are used to negate the preconditioned activities of the individual. Let's explain that. Does every individual not have a ritual, whether they're involved in the Shastra or not? Everyone has a ritual. Some of us have a ritual watching TV, sports, access, going out. We all have rituals one way or the other. Karma Kanda is also rituals. And what is the purpose of Karma Kanda? To negate the ill effects of our existing rituals. Because we ask ourselves, where are our rituals taking us? And we say, well, my ritual's taking me to the TV. And then we ask, is that useful? And then we answer, no, it's not. It is useful until you see that it's no longer useful, at least. But then the question comes by this mind. It says, now what? Give me something else to do. And so we give you the Karma Kanda section, rituals. The second section is the Upasana Kanda. Upasana Kanda, now if you look at 2 words in that little compound, Upa means near. Upa asana, sitting near. So more specifically, it is to sit mentally near the object of meditation. It means to fix your mind upon something that is mental in nature, which involves upasana, mostly associated with meditation. Therefore, we are mentally putting our mind close onto that object of worship. Of course, you're going to say, why? Why do we do that? Goes back to the same answer as Karma Kanda. Where is our minds on? Unless we introduce something that is more helpful, something that leads us to the light. Our minds is focusing on drama TV and TV shows and the world events, the world news. In other words, whether Karma Kanda or Upasana Kanda are introduced or not, you and I, without it, are still doing rituals and focusing on something mentally. So it's a question of changing our rituals and changing our focus. The third section of the Vedas, the source of knowledge, is called the Jnana Kanda. Jnana Kanda deals with self-knowledge specifically. We're not talking about worldly knowledge. We're talking about that which is the principle behind the world, that which holds the world together, which is beyond the means of instrument of science. Next question we introduce is, we ask, why are there 3 sections? Is it just randomly like that? If Vedas is the source of all knowledge, And there's 3 sections there specifically. Is it not fair to ask, why 3? The answer is because since the beginning, all human beings have only had 3 kinds of issues. What are those issues? Well, let's go back to Karma Kanda. What does that deal with? Rituals. Suppose you don't have the right rituals. You're going to be doing rituals anyway, according to your what? Inherent tendencies. That's called vasana, samskara. What are inherent tendencies? Things you've done in the past, over and over again. That means they're so strong that they compel the person to attend to a ritual called maybe smoking, or maybe to just go out too much, or to play a lot of sports, or to stay indoors too much. All of these are rituals performed before. And what kind of mental state does this produce? Impurity, agitation of the mind. Now, what do we mean by impurity? Why is the mind impure? Again, the same question applies. Because without the scriptures, without the guidance, the individual has most likely been attending to those things which are in the name of inherent tendencies and not in the name of the Lord's word. What is that to be done right now? How can I attain my duty in such a way as to serve the community versus serving my mere selfish desires, my mere needs? So Karma Kanda deals with impurities of the mind. Upasana Kanda deals with restlessness of the mind. Jnana Kanda deals with ignorance of the mind. What is there in common here? Mind, mind, mind. Impurities of the mind, restlessness of the mind, ignorance of the mind. So what is the bottom line, beginningless problem to address here? The mind. Is that not true in your experience? That's all you have. I am saying this because of this mind. You are interpreting this because of your mind. How you interpret this is because of your mind. Whether you choose to interpret this or not listen to what I'm saying is because of your mind. How we perceive the world is because of our mind. Whether we perceive it in the right format, in the right method, or that method which by perceiving so agitates us is because of the mind. Therefore, our entire life from the beginning to end is nothing but work with the mind. You need not touch this nature of yourself because you have been watching this mind since the beginning. So we only need to address the mind through which these eyes called the self, they're not actual eyes, are looking through. In other words, if the mind is contaminated, then these eyes called the self, which is the same self that is looking through those eyes, will be perceiving through whose mind? This mind. Will be perceiving through whose mind? That mind. Therefore, 2 people stand side by side. One of them sees the world as it is, how it deserves to be seen, sees the glory, the vibhutis of the Lord. And another mind equally sees the same sight. And yet they both have different interpretations. One's aligned with the reality, one's aligned with, ironically, the reality, but whose reality? Their own reality, subjective reality. And this is the beginningless problem. Everyone's opinionating one thing over the next, and yet the individual who's living from their own reality is as convinced as the one who's living with the reality and seeing things as they are. Therefore, that individual who's looking through their own minds has to bring it back and see the world through objective eyes, through the Lord's eyes, without judgment, without opinionation, without the need to generate how things are to be, what they should look like, what they shouldn't look like. We call it in psychology shouldisms. What should be and what shouldn't be, how things should be and how they shouldn't be. All life like that. Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Jnana Kanda, impure mind, restless mind, ignorant mind. And this Karma Kanda, starting with that, generates what? Generates the need to participate in the world. Chapter 15, verse 2, we talked about the samsara tree upside down. Every time the person does his own or her ritual, what happens? Those roots, remember how the tree was upside down? So the Brahman trees go up, And all of the other roots go down where? Into the tree. And the tree is what? Samsara. Therefore, every time the person performs his ritual in the name of his or her truth, the roots go down and entangle them further into the world. And every time we reverse that by consciously doing a ritual that is other than our own, that is prescribed by the Vedas, we eliminate those roots which hold us down, hold us and bind us to the world of action, to the world of perception, to the world of opinions, to the world of misinterpretations. Therefore, step one, karma kanda. Now, what does karma kanda do? It generates likes and dislikes, but it does what? It cancels out your existing likes and dislikes. Now, what are likes and dislikes? Suppose you tell to your child, hey, let's attend a spiritual event. And what do? Why? Notice that? No. Why? What is that? Even though you are in touch with the reality and you know this is a good event to attend, if there is a dislike for that, irrespective of whether that's good for me or not, I'm going to question it. I'm going to justify why it is not good for me. That is how pratibhasika mind works. That is how subjectivity works. It tries to justify why its own version of reality is better. And yet when that individual goes to school, he or she succumbs to what? Peer pressure. Peer pressure that is not in their best self-interest. Why? Because there is a like for that. There is a like for whatever is being offered by the friends. This is how these inherent tendencies manifest at the level of the body through what we call raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes. Therefore, we have to neutralize them through karma kanda. And then upasana kanda. Again, sitting near the object of meditation. And we have a lovely example of this. How do you benefit by sitting near mentally to the object of meditation? Well, what is a metaphor? Imagine there's a log by a burning fire. If you leave that log there long enough, what's going to happen? It's not only going to capture its heat, but eventually that log will start to burn. In that same way, as you and I find an idol, something that inspires you of divinity, something that uplifts you immediately, something that is very personal to you according to your culture, your background, your family status, and your own personality. When you have that idol, this is called upasana kanda, put it in front of you, through observing that, through focusing on that, through meditating on that, through the course of time, you start to acquire those values, acquire those attributes, acquire those qualities. This is why it's crucial. If you wish to meditate and clear up your mind, remember upasana is linked with what? An agitated mind. If you wish to solve that through the path of meditation, it is crucial that you pick some idol that you personally resonate with, because the common error is we just choose anyone. Oh, I like them. But my question to you is, okay, what about them do you like? What qualities do they have that you wish to emulate? Do you know? In other words, you should know, because by the observance of that idol, I don't want to waste my time. I want to be absorbing those qualities which I know they have, which could be beneficial for you and I. Upasana, meditating on the object of worship. Now you say, how does that work? It's not that the actual idol has any powers, but it's that the idol, through the observance, through the focus upon it, reminds you constantly of those qualities. And therefore, in the course of time, what happens when the mind long enough focuses on something? It emulates it. It becomes that. It merges with it, as though it merges with it. We call it atonement. If you put dashes there, atonement, at one mint. At one mint with my idol. Path of meditation. And finally, the path of self-knowledge. These three sections comprise the whole Vedas, specifically because they address the three problems of the human mind. How does this now tie with the Bhagavad Gita? Well, the Bhagavad Gita is divided into three sections. Chapter 2 to 6 deals with what? Karma kanda, call it karma yoga. It deals with the individual. The easiest part to address, the part that most relate with, which is what? The physical body, the rituals. Like, let me change the nature of rituals in my life. And so we give you chapter 2 to 6 in the Bhagavad Gita. The principal practice being karma yoga, changing the attitude with which you conduct yourself and transact in this world. No longer is it just going to the job to get money, but rather I'm going to the job because it is my duty, so that it becomes a means to the end. And what's the end? Moksha. The job is there just to provide security long enough so that I can concentrate and meditate, karma kanda, upasana kanda, jnana yoga, those three at home or wherever you need to do that without concern of money or job and so on. In other words, the new attitude becomes it is a means to an end. It's no longer the end. Money is no longer the end. Treating clients is no longer the end. And yet, ironically, once you learn that I'm not treating just the client, but I'm treating the Lord in the form of a client, your whole duty becomes so much more pristine, so much more divine, so much more clear. How we talk with people now changes, because I'm not just talking to a person, I'm talking to a person with history who is sustained by the same intelligence that this individual is now sustained by. So in other words, people become a means through which I can see the Lord, and not just, let me talk to you, let me address your concerns, goodbye, next. That is a waste of your precious time on earth. So karma yoga optimizes your flow, optimizes your thinking, how you do things with a much more graceful perception that purifies you rather than impulsively causes the individual to deal with the onslaught of conditionalities that we consistently come into this world. 2 to 6, karma kanda. And then 7 to 12, upasana kanda, upasana yoga. This deals with, once again, sitting mentally near to the object of your meditation. Chapter 6 specifically talked about the Ashtanga yoga, the 8 steps, how to go about sitting mentally near the object of meditation. Why? Go back to the beginning of the conversation. What are the 3 problems? Restless mind, impure mind, ignorant mind. Therefore, all of these are only for the mind, the purpose of the mind. And finally, 13 to 18, we are talking about jnana yoga. Now, 13, 14, and 15 is specifically about the Jiva Brahman Aikyam, the connection or the resolution between the small individual, the apparently small individual, and the total. And then we have to ask, if the third section is entirely jnana yoga, right? Chapter 13 to 18, why is chapters 16 and 17 seemingly disconnected from jnana yoga? Because it's got nothing to do with jnana yoga. It's mostly focused on the individual, which was talked about in chapter 2 to 6 and 7 to 12, the Jiva, Ishvara, and now we're supposed to talk about Brahman. And yet, pause, 16, 17, let's go back to the individual. Again, the Bhagavad Gita is written by a brilliant intelligence. Just the structure of itself tells you how to go about your journey in life. Think about it. I am in the last section of my life, 13, 14, 15, not even doing satya mithya viveka anymore, because even that becomes redundant. Discriminating atma, anatma. Only one content appearing as the many forms. This is 13, 14, 15, the final understanding. The understanding before that is satya mithya viveka, satya mithya discrimination, changing versus unchanging. But even that becomes eventually but a tool that has led me to understand I need not do any kind of viveka because there's only one truth manifesting as the many forms. So where's the question of discriminating one from the other? What are you discriminating? So this final understanding is 13, 14, 15. And then what happens? Again, the samskaras come. Oh, I doubt this. I don't quite get it. No problem. 16 and 17. We will get back to the person every once in a while performing our self-knowledge inquiry or discrimination so that you can purify the individual further. Being a collection, a summation of so many conditions from the beginning time. And those conditions will come spontaneously at varying times. Therefore, every once in a while, what do? You say, stop. Let me put a pause on self-knowledge. Let me go back to the individual. 16, 17 over, and then we go back into 18, which is the yoga of moksha. And therefore, that concludes the whole Gita. That is the structure of the Vedas in connection with the Bhagavad Gita, which now brings us to the summary of chapter 16 before we move on to chapter 17. Considering we have talked about the prominence of the mind, whether it's an agitated mind, a restless mind, or an ignorant mind, it's still the mind. The first step for addressing the mind would be to bring out those contaminations which move the mind away from Bhagavan, from Bhagavan's order, from the order of harmony. Tao Te Ching, we call it the Tao. Different cultures, we call it different terms. It is always the same. That harmony with which once aligned, things flow. Chapter 16, Daiva Asura Sampattihi, pure and impure qualities.
Daiva is in harmony and Asura is disharmony, both within and without.
Harmony with oneself, with the world, and disharmony, discord with oneself and the world. And again, if the entire Vedas deals with the mind, then chapter 16 has to deal with the mind. Antahkarana Shuddhi, we call it, the inner instrument purification, purifying this instrument that has been exposed to the world for a long time, but it didn't receive guidance how to or what is worthy of pursuit and what is not worthy of pursuit. Therefore, it starts to assume that everything is worthy of pursuit. This. But a lot of things are coming from where? Those who too are believing the same thing. This is also worthy of pursuit. Therefore, we become like everyone else, like a robot, following the same principles, never really validating what is the truth, what's the real validity behind it. So, Antahkarana Shuddhi is about bringing out those qualities which once in harmony you and I are, it creates a life of prosperity, happiness, joyfulness, upliftment. Things work much better than if one puts themselves out of alignment with it. Krishna has to bring these qualities out. Why? Once again, because we have never been taught what's the difference between that harmony and discord of harmony. Like, what is it? You need to first ask that question. And then even if we ask that question, we need a barometer. And what is that barometer? Daiva versus Asura. Pure versus impure, contaminated versus clean. In the Upanishads, we have something called the Shreyaha and Preyaha, the path of the hard but necessary. That's called Shreyaha, hard and necessary, versus path of the easy and gratifying. So which one would you like? The path of the hard but necessary, painful, hard. It doesn't have to be painful, but painful, hard, necessary, or easy and instant gratifying. Which one would you like? Choose. Yeah. Shreyaha, Preyaha. These two paths the person makes up each day in every action that they perform. So it's a constant choosing. Should I choose something that is necessary or something that is instantly gratifying? And thus the product of those choices made on a daily basis is what makes up the person called you right now. We talked about different qualities, and I'm not going to go through all of them, even though I will ask you to tell me about some qualities at the end. However, what we will do is talk about the 4 topics that chapter 16 has dealt with. And these topics apply to you, by the way. So it's not just an academic conversation. The first topic is the Purusha. The Purusha, the person. What chapter 16 was telling us is that before doing anything, look at your physical health. Suppose your physical health was not at par with something that you would go out with and have a strong immunity system. Suppose it's not in par with that, right? And it feels weak. And if, the organs are failing, or high blood pressure, sore back, too much sitting on a computer, not enough exercise, and then start to worry, oh, I'm picking up some weight. And that starts to make the mind a little bit more concerned. And you go, oh, I need to take care of this. Takes your mind away from what needs to be done. Once again, I neglected the basics of the basics, the physical. Get sick. And then you think that's just a one-off? No, that's 7 days, sometimes 15 days of my life gone just because of a weak immune system. So take care of your immune system. Eat the right foods, keep yourself warm, or depending on where you live, even sometimes too much heat can cause a problem. Second is physical health, number one. Mental health, what does this mean? Having the right emotional support. This can come through company, through friends, through associating with people with different opinions. Sometimes we need a friend once in a while, the different aspect, different perspective of things. It doesn't have to do anything with self-knowledge, but just general emotional support. How else can we get emotional support?
Have honest communication with people, where you're at and what's happening in your life. Have healthy boundaries, communicate boundaries to people and realize that you've hit a limit with people so they can interact with that rather than thinking that you're limitless and immortal.
Okay. So what Ben is saying is that, see, if I don't set up boundaries, then I get, become a doormat. Then that may come later tomorrow in the form of resentment. That already decreases my emotional stability in communicating honestly and standing firm if you feel like you're being crossed, and communicating honestly what your needs really are.
Reading good literature or films, you can identify with situations that other people are in and see other solutions, just to help sort of depersonalize sometimes your feelings.
For me, I try to do something that inspires me every day. So I might call my mom because I'm very close to my mom and she inspires me. Or I might go and take a walk in nature or read a book. So I think it's important to be inspired every day. And that gives me emotional support.
Yeah, meditation, mantra, service, and satsang. Writing actually my emotions down. That moment, instead of sharing it with another person, what I do first is, my first step is to actually write some of the feelings and thoughts that goes on in me, or any dilemma that goes on inside me. I write it down and I feel it just releases me a lot. Just like I've left it somewhere else. It's not within me, troubling me. Good. So that helps me out first before I actually even seek out someone to talk about it.
Brilliant way to manifest or convert those abstracts into concretes on a piece of paper.
Hi, Andre. I heard about mind mapping, but I have never tried it. Is it the same thing?
So you create a little branch, not a branch, but a bubble. And in the bubble is the center topic of what happens to be the main subject area. Maybe it could be my emotions, how I feel right now. And you just kind of move the mouse away from that bubble and it generates a tree, like a little fat tree with a different color. And then on that tree trunk, you can create what the theme of that trunk is. And then on that tree, create another bubble, right? What that tree represents. And now out of that bubble, other little bubbles float up. And this is a fantastic way to memorize, by the way, or to understand any topic whatsoever, because the way your mind works is actually identical to mind maps. A neuron there's a collection of neurons on one area. And those collection of neurons are associated to other set of neurons. Maybe it could be the frontal cortex, or through the speech, or through the visual. And all of these are working together. They're connected. Now, when you create a mind map, you're actually replicating the way your brain naturally works. More so than that, you can then add a symbolic picture onto every trunk, onto every bubble. A symbolic picture that represents or encompasses that entire trunk in one single picture. Now, if you want to recall, you just look at that one little mind map, all of it comes back. And I refuse to read a book nowadays without mind mapping, because the whole thing is just going to get forgotten. Isn't this your experience when you read a book? You read a book, no matter how good it is, and what are you thinking? I wish I could memorize this.
Yes, for me, practicing forgiveness and gratitude, gives the emotional support.
Good.
There are a few other things like doing puja, upasana, and celebrating, festivals, doing fasting. That also helps me, to stay at a balanced level of emotions.
Now, when you say forgiveness, Meena, would you mind telling us what is forgiveness? Because it's a powerful word and there's so much connotations inside that word.
Forgiveness for me comes from understanding that so first instances that I'm mad at someone, right? I feel that someone has done bad to me or not respected me, for example. So the understanding, bringing the understanding that the person has his or her own conditioning, and maybe because of that, that person is acting like in a specific manner. So I can forgive, with that understanding.
Mm.
And the second thing is, it could also mean that I do not want to get into that emotion of, resentment or maybe hatred, because that's not good for me. So it's better to, forgive and forget and then move on.
Move on with an understanding why you're actually moving on.
Right.
Yeah.
And in case there is, it's your fault, you should say sorry.
Exactly.
And then move on. It's not that, you are in your own bubble and you're tagging everyone that, okay, this person is conditioned, and just go on. You are also conditioned,
You
right?
are
So
conditioned,
take care of your own conditioning as well.
This is brilliant. So forgiveness, two parts. One of them is I understand that this person is a product of causes, and this person could have made a mistake unintentionally. I don't know, because I don't know all the facts. I don't have all the data that took place for them to make this mistake, which generated this feeling inside me. And the second is, even if this person honestly made a mistake, I still could have been over exaggerating or over interpreting what it actually means. Maybe it's not as a big deal as it actually is. So these two, we have to be careful. Owing to these two being possibilities, I choose to accommodate whatever is going on. I choose to accommodate myself in reference to this person. In other words, I choose to forgive. Okay, so physical, emotional, and finally intellectual. If you are mentally Tao, we're number one still, Purushaha. If you're mentally Tao, your mind's mentally Tao, is it going to listen or is it going to ascertain? And how deep can it really look inside philosophical matters? Very shallow, isn't that true? Now, that shallowness of the mind may not be related to philosophy, that also may be related to other topics. So in other words, the way we develop depth towards thinking is by finding some topic which forces us to think deeper. In other words, we're building a deep looking vasana. Maybe I should rephrase that. A vasana that makes your mind look deeper than the surface, than the obvious. Intellectual fine-tuning. Can learn a language that challenges the mind, challenges the intellect, stimulates the brain cells. Can learn some new skill, take on mathematics, give yourself a formula, figure it out. Anything that you enjoy, that's according to your personality, stimulate that mind. Because by the time we get out of high school, for most of us, that's the last time we read a book or stimulate our minds properly. And those who do continue, it's only for the sake of going to university to get a PhD or some certificate to work. And from then on, it stops. In other words, become a lifelong educator, lifelong learner with emotional support and physical exercise. Felix?
I would say perhaps it's also important not to get into a black or white thinking, like, I don't know, now I'm done, I don't have to do anything, just what comes along, but always learn and always.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, always ask questions, because asking questions keeps your mind entertained in the topic of the world, engaged. Okay, doer. So the first one, the 4 conditions to look within ourselves is the person: physical, mental, and intellectual. Second is doer. This is called a karta, doer. What does this involve? Converting our impulsive or mechanical actions into deliberate. I hope you said deliberate. Converting our impulsive mechanical actions, which have been done before, by mere practice, by mere repetition, short-circuiting that, intercepting that through deliberate thinking. As I just said now, I was using the laptop, and then suddenly that short circuit comes, hey, could there be a better way of doing these webinars? Yes, maybe put a monitor in front of you, and then you can look straight. You don't have to keep your head down all the time. In other words, from mechanical into deliberate. What does this do? This also keeps your mind highly engaged. This makes you a deliberate doer, a doer that is inquiring rather than just impulsively repeating the same thing over and over again. A common thing is, we have experts left and right telling us, I've got 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience. Most of the time, that is just 1 year of experience repeated 30 times. I've got 30 years of experience. No, more like 1 year of experience repeated over and over and over and over again. And now you're saying with this, big thing of 30 years. In other words, don't let this happen to you. Become that one who says, I got 30 years of Vedanta, and one person can say to you, oh, you mean thinking the same according to their model? No, according to being interested in so many more things than just Advaita Vedanta, engaging myself in other philosophies just because I love it, just because I enjoy knowledge and enjoy keeping my mind engaged with this, lovely wisdom that is, percolated all throughout. In other words, you're expanding your view. Not doing the things over and over again, but rather with a new sense of inspiration. We call it in Buddhism, beginner's mind, as though you're a beginner, doing it for the first time ever. I'm boiling the water in the kettle for the first time ever, even though we do it every day. How much more would that make you attuned to realities, to what's going on around you? I'm holding the cup, that's called doing. I'm doing the cup, drinking differently. Maybe instead of sipping loudly, try sipping softly. I'm doing the brush of teeth slower rather than faster, or faster rather than slower. I'm doing the walking with some style rather than the same old walk. I'm doing the eating by chewing maybe 20 times instead of 5 times. Okay. This also involves replace unwise actions with wise actions. How do you know whether an action is wise or unwise?
Feeling of negative emotions.
Yeah, that's a great barometer. So if it's an unwise action, then you're going to have some inner conflict, which is going to manifest in a form of an emotion that is unpleasant. Yes?
Peace of mind. Peace of mind. Does it bring peace to my mind or not?
Good. Yeah. So, and this is, again, a very abstract experience when we say peace of mind. So if I do a quality wise action, it's going to make me feel good about what just happened. I won't have any problems sharing the results with the society. Hey, I've done this. One of the ways to determine whether an action is wise or unwise, you just ask yourself this: how many people is this benefiting? Is it just benefiting myself? That's called the unwisest action. The most unwise action, it only benefits one single individual while trampling on everyone else around. Suppose I get into a loud car with an exhaust with 300 decibels, louder than a rocket, and I just step on the accelerator, enjoying myself. Who's benefiting? I alone am. Everyone around me is paying the price for my actions. This is the most unwise actions you can have. Whereas an action that benefits the most amount of people, in general, I'm not saying this is the only barometer, but in general, most amount of people is closer to the definition of a wise action. Therefore, ask yourself this: is my action helping one person? If not, can it help 2 people? Can it help 3 people? Can it help 4 people? And so on. And then we've got bhokta. So purushaha, person, karta, doer, and we've got bhokta, enjoyer. How do we optimize the enjoyer? Okay, first of all, I'll tell you what an enjoyer is. An enjoyer is that person who not only enjoys the results, but also suffers the results. So when you think of bhokta, you usually think, the enjoyer. No, the enjoyer, I'm enjoying the pain. In other words, I'm enjoying the consequences of my actions. So when we say optimize the bhokta, what we mean is no matter what happens in life, pleasant or unpleasant, it is looked through the eyes of intellect. The moment that intellect, that little candle burning of the candle flame of the intellect, the moment that flame blows away by the winds of the world, I, the seer, no longer look at that intellect and I see the movie called Maya, called the images, all flowing behind, and I get lost and everything becomes important. What happened? I become the enjoyer and the sufferer, whatever is going on behind. The moment that flame comes back on, I continue, I, the one seer who never loses sight, always looking, continue looking through the intellect, educated intellect, dharmic intellect, the one that has attended the classes, that kind of intellect. And I continue looking, therefore I don't get lost by the endless images appearing in front. We call it the world of fanciness, the world of glamour. In other words, to be a sophisticated, intelligent enjoyer involves always looking through the eyes of that flame of that intellect. And through that, you assess what needs to happen next. The moment that blows away, whether temporarily or for a long time, I lose it. I lose myself in the world. Bhakta, enjoyer. The question is then, how do we become an intelligent bhakta? Well, step one, get educated. Continue being educated. In fact, this is the theme of this entire session. Continue being an educator, but also a learner. Two, most important, have a list of default responses when something unpleasant happens. A list of something that you can act by default when something unpleasant happens. Because what happens when something unpleasant happens? It's too late, isn't it? We lose ourselves in it. So if we have a list, so you improvise, you say, suppose that my boss threatens my position, right? How will I choose to see this? And then you create that on a list. You create the list of possible circumstances. You put them all out on a piece of paper. And you create next to those circumstances, default way which I will resort to, or which I will think so that I can handle this in the most intelligent fashion possible. Once it happens, it's too late. Forget about the classes, forget about the guru, forget about the acharya, forget about the Vedas, it's too late. Be prepared before it happens. Someone approaches me, confronts me. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? I lost myself already. The flame is gone. If I have that list, the mind goes onto that flame, onto that list, and instantly I can at least intelligently respond. And that's going to lead me to somewhere else intelligently. So, number one, how to deal with this situation of the flame blowing out. Have a list ready. And two, you can see it as Ishvara Prasadaha. It is a gift of the Lord. Here, my dear child, deal with this right now. This is a situation presented specifically for you. Deal with it according to your best abilities. Ishvara's grace, it is a gift. Don't look at it as a problem or as a huge obstacle, an unfortunate circumstance. Don't even see it as a fortunate circumstance, just a gift, and work with it intelligently according to that flame. Refusing to let that flame blow. Winds are blowing left and right. Someone has died. Separation. Someone has come back into my life. The flame is still there. The siblings are refusing to withdraw or to give their share of the money from my parents who have passed away. They refuse to give the money. They refuse to share. This is a common situation, by the way. The flame is still there. I think that I am not worthy. The flame is still there. Right? Love issues pop up. Abandonment issues pop up. The flame is still there, still looking through the flame of intellect. Never leaves. Refusing to let it leave. The moment it does, it is the world of appearance, waiting to grab me, samsara tree. Purushaha, person, physical, mental, intellectual. Take care of these three. Basic worldly duty. Second, karta, optimize the doer. Convert mechanical actions or impulsive actions into deliberate actions. Number three, bhakta, how to change the bhakta by looking through the flame of the intellect, whether pleasant or unpleasant. Even if something exciting happens, do not lose yourself in that excitement, because it is Ishvara Prasadaha. And 4, this is in reference to the mumukshu, the spiritual seeker. In other words, number 4 involves having a consistent relationship, being in the company of 3 principles. Number 1, the guru, the one who expounds the knowledge, being in the company of the pramana, means by which I do what? Number 1, negate those influences of the impulsive mind, of the agitated mind, of the ignorant mind. And 3, so guru, pramana, and God. In other words, you keep that intelligence there, the intelligence that is always working, keep it where? In front of the intellect, until it becomes so present that there is no question of that flame moving. Nothing can blow it. It's just a still flame. God, scriptures, guru. Be in the presence of these 3. Now you say, how do you be in the presence of God? I'm always in the presence of God. Again, it is done through that constant reminder of what is this world made out of? What is the truth behind this world? What is happening behind the appearances? In that aspect, you keep God in front and keep associating with that knowledge. Okay, now verse 1 to 3 of the chapter 16, Daiva Sampatihi. So these are all the qualities that are for the sake of refining the body mind, bringing it back with the order, with the Tao, with the principle of harmony. And I'm not going to go through all of them, and I'll just list them out. But the first one was abhayam, fearlessness. I do want to cover this one though. How do you become fear? How do you become fearlessness and overcome fear?
You inquire into the fear.
You inquire, what's the nature of this fear? Is it justified fear? What specifically am I fearing? Can I prove what I'm fearing is actually fear-worthy?
Yes, I was saying the same thing, by obtaining knowledge about that event.
Good. Now I want to take that keyword, by attaining knowledge about that. In other words, okay, let's go after, before and after. Before obtaining knowledge, where was I? Subjectivity. In other words, I was assuming what it is. Assuming what? That it's going to hurt, that it's going to be not in my favor. Once we get knowledge through inquiring, we gain objectivity. We gain a standpoint by which we can see it for what it is. In other words, the fear was only a response through looking through the eyes of subjectivity, rather at looking through the eyes of where it was looking at as it actually is, in the light of being informed. In other words, get informed. Those things that remain unknowns is ones that bring fear to us. The wrathful God. Why is he wrathful? Because I do not know who he is or what he is, or whether even he is a he or a she. I don't have all the facts. In other words, projections. Projections create fear. Projections come from assumptions. Assumptions come from lack of education. Lack of education comes from not willing to inquire, Elizabeth is saying. Not willing to inquire comes from what we call a tamasic mind. How do we resolve a tamasic mind? Chapter 16, by following Daiva Sampatihi. The second way to attain this fearlessness, in other words, to minimize this unnatural fear, is by keeping your eye on that which is the highest goal. The moment we lose our sight on the highest goal, everything, the small things become big. Everything becomes worthy of our attention. In other words, we give it too much importance. If your eye is on the goal, the ultimate goal, then things in front, I don't even notice, even though you're still going to cross them over, because you've been crossing them over since beginningless time. Why? Because Ishvara was acting through you. You were not doing it. In other words, when I cannot see the goal, then I become the karta bhokta. I become the doer. I become the enjoyer. And that doer enjoyer seems as if it is fearful. It's a fearful experience because I need to do, I need to enjoy, I need to suffer. When I keep my eye on the high goal, on the big vision, then no matter what happens, it will happen as it always has been happening. But this time, those things no longer carry that signature of fear. So where is your vision? On the next thing in life or the ultimate end? The end for which you were really born. The end for which you were really coming back on earth for. So again, fearlessness. 1, Elizabeth, inquire into the nature of the object, gain mina, knowledge about it, and become therefore objective towards that object. And 2, keep your eye on the big vision at all times, no matter what happens. Family affairs, big vision. Personal affairs, big vision. International affairs, big vision. National affairs, big vision. Economy is going down, big vision. Because that is the only reason truly why you came here, according to the scriptures. And then we have sattva samshuddhi, which is mental purity.
Okay, I guess I would say simplicity.
So simplifying our life, right? We know exactly what belongs where, and therefore we keep it pure like that. When things get too confusing, then some things catch on dirt, and I don't, notice what they are, and then we take that on. So if you simplify your life, you know exactly what belongs where my thoughts belong, with whom they belong, and I keep them in the pure places. I exchange purity with purity. Go from purity to another purity. It's called satsangs. Talk purity to another purity. It's called a friend who understands your position. Watch purity. Let's watch a movie, horror movie. Impurity. Vulgar words, impurity. In other words, you simplify your life so you know exactly where you're going, what you're doing, how long you're staying, and therefore you minimize the impurities accumulating on the mind. Just like clothes. Walk in the world, clothes naturally catch on dust. Even though we don't intend to, they still catch on dust. The mind's like that too. Swadhyayaha, scriptural study.
Freshens my inquiry every time I study a chapter. It just freshens up my inquiring. I can read the same chapter 10 times and I still have things to inquire.
So the chapter brings up more questions, new questions, fresh questions. And those fresh questions change your focus. While your focus changes, you go into a different topic. In other words, our focus is only as good as our questions. Our questions are only as good as the books that we read. The more books we read, the more intelligent, the more questions we can ask. The more questions we ask, the greater our focus expands onto other things. Dhanam, charity.
Charity is generosity of spirit, both towards others and yourself.
Is it just money?
No, money is part of it, but it could be understanding or behaviors.
Yeah. In other words, you're giving according to your capacity, right? Whatever it is, it could be money, it could be time, it could be a smile, a hello. That is also charity. Give according to your capacity, never more. Otherwise, it turns into resentment. And then I don't want to give anymore. We associate resentment to giving. So again, I'm looking through the eyes of intellect, through the flame of intellect. How much can I give? Okay, next one is Dhammaha, sense control, being deliberate in your sense control. That means exposing your senses deliberately to those places that are, as Ben said, keep you pure, keep you simple. Something fun's going on. Come. Okay, what's going on? Well, there's a boxing match. Well, that involves a lot of tamaguna hitting, and it's fun to watch, but it involves some violence. No thanks. Sense control, deliberation. I'll turn my eyes and ears towards the Upanishads. Yajnaha, worship of God.
For me, yagna means discipline. I think in second or third chapter, it tells the different types of yagna.
Yeah.
And it says that there are dravya yagna, there are pranayama yagna, like prana and apana. Then they've mentioned many of them, and it comes down to having a disciplined lifestyle.
Tapaha, austerity. Arjavam, straightforwardness or integrity, an integrous person. What you say is what you follow up. Keep your promises. Person can trust you because you never change. Oh, you do change your mind, but then at least you're honest about it. Ahimsa, which is non-violence. Being careful to minimize the damage in this world as much as you can. Realistically, that's impossible because you're always stepping on insects, but just doing the best you can to minimize hurting through words, through speech, well, words, speech, through actions, through thoughts. Just stop that. And when you catch yourself, just stop. Satyam, truthfulness. And then we have Tyagaha, renunciation.
Tyagaha for me is disclaiming the doership in the actions that we do. The karta bhava from the action, that is called tyaga. For
Right.
example, if I give for charity to someone and I keep saying I paid this much, so this is not a charity or tyaga unless I remove the doership. So it's disclaiming doership from the actions. That is tyagaha.
Beautiful. So you're stripping out that sense of I am doing this, that sense of a doer, the sense of enjoyer. You're just doing it as a duty. Would that be a fair way to say it?
Yes, if with the right understanding. Because duty we usually associate it with our people, our society, someone I know or my family. If I'm giving something or contributing towards someone who is unknown to me, for example, and when there is absence of ahankara and mamatvam, like sense of I-ness and mindness,
Yeah.
and then I'm giving, that is called tyaga. Otherwise, if I say, okay, I did this, I did charity, I did puja, it won't amount to tyaga.
It won't amount to any spiritual benefit either.
Right.
Renunciation is understanding none of this belongs to me anyway. Okay, shantihi, calmness and patience. Then apaishunam, absence of slander, absence of defamation, refusing to talk behind people's backs. If they walked in and heard you say that, you would be embarrassed. That is apaishunam, absence of that. In other words, whenever a person that you're talking to walks in unexpectedly, you will be proud and glad you said what you said. You'll be like, yep, I was just saying this good things about you. And then we have daya bhuteshu, kindness to all beings. Aloluptvam, freedom from temptation. Mardavam, gentleness. Hrihi, modesty. Achapalam, freedom from restlessness. Tejaha, smartness. In other words, glow. That is something that you can really learn. It is something that your jiva becomes through the knowledge, through the exercise. Tejaha, the glow of the person. Kshama, patience. Drittihi, fortitude. That means to have the courage to go through the hard times. Persistence. This is hard, staying up until 8 o'clock. So hard. Come on, hurry up. Fortitude. Shaucham, purity. Adrohaha, absence of ill will. Ahimsa is non-violence at the physical level, then adrohaha is non-violence at the word level or at the thought level. Natimanita, humility. Okay, and then verse 4 to 21 was Asuri Sampat. And these are traits that ensue when the natural program is covered by its own notions. But being born with private notions, subjectivity, we cover that natural program. And these are the traits that we exude. And what are they? Vanity, narcissism. Vanity is narcissism or self-glorification. I'm so good. Look at me. Put the spotlight on myself. In other words, the person lives through validation of others. That is what motivates one. Arrogance, this is self-importance. This is about, let me show you how much I know. I'm going to give you a 5-page email on the basis of that one single word that you said. Hey, divine child. And then someone sends you a 5-page email. No, you're not divine. You're a sinner. Let me explain to you why you're a sinner. Only God is divine. It's like arrogance. In other words, you're not connecting. One's not connecting at the level that the individual is speaking from. They're connecting from their own mind and speaking from that place. That's called arrogance. That means disregarding what needs to happen. What do I need to really deliver? What do I need to give right now? Disregarding that. Anger, cruelty, ignorance, that is ceasing to educate yourself. That's called ignorance. That gives rise to ignorance, ceasing to get educated. Then impurity, absence of religious discipline, absence of truthfulness, absence of faith in God, endless desire of sense pleasure. Next one, delusion, attaching meaning onto things that are not true, not investigating into them. That's delusion. Attachment. What does attachment mean? Attachment. You're attached to something. By the way, attachment is healthy. There's also unhealthy attachment. What is unhealthy attachment versus healthy attachment? Healthy attachment is I'm attached, but I can detach. Unhealthy attachment is I am so attached that I become needy. I need this object. I go with this object everywhere. Can't go without them. Every social event, they have to come with me. Right? They're like a little, like my little personal chauffeur. So every once in a while, test yourself. If you bring something with you every single time, or you depend on something, every once in a while say, this time I'm going to go alone. This time I will do it without that object. At least one social event by yourself. At least one attendance by yourself. Every once in a while. If you cannot do that, you're attached. That's called unhealthy attachment. Every once in a while, take the same road. Unwilling to try something new, forgo an adventure, maybe take the left turn, right turn. If you can't do that, you're attached to a road. Yeah, because that spills onto so many other things. It's not about the road. If you're attached to one thing, it likely means you're attached to other things. That's the point. Greed, this is refusing to share, or hoarding. It's the same thing. Refusing to share, that means I've got something, but I don't want to give you, I only give you a little bit, just so I could appear like a nice person. Or hoarding, accumulating more. Slander, this is the last one, and this is speaking, once again, ill of someone in such a way that you'd be embarrassed if they caught you speaking about them. None of these things are to be practiced, says Krishna. Krishna said, if this is all too much, all these qualities, he says, okay, just simplify it. 3 qualities give rise to all of these asuric qualities. And what are they? Anger, greed, and desire. And he says, even if that is too much, just desire. Because desire, unexpressed desire or obstructed desire gives birth to anger. Anger or gives birth to greed or gives birth to anger. It could be either way. Anger then makes you justify why I want that object even more. And therefore I become greedy for it even more. Someone's obstructed my desire in front of me. I'm angry. I don't have what I want. I'm going to get it so much now. I'll become even more greedy. So change the nature of desire. To what is the desire pointing to? Flimsy things of the world, or something that is in the name of that big vision, that big goal, as I spoke about earlier. In other words, all desires get redirected towards the big vision, and all of these qualities, including anger and greed, they just fall away, including the 4 to 21 verse talked about all these other asuric qualities. So what's the root cause? You tell me now. What's the root cause of all of these qualities?
Desire.
Desire. And why is it desire? Explain, rationalize, give me logic.
The jiva doesn't know its true nature. What it's seeking, it thinks is in the world to be desired and achieved instead of in the self.
So the desires unfulfilled, it gives rise to krodha, anger. Desires fulfilled, it gives rise to greed, lobha. So if you work on desire, then because that's the root cause of all the other demonic qualities.
And then verse 22 to 24 is the last section, the third section of chapter 16. And here, Krishna talked about the importance of Shastra, that they are a valid means of knowledge, which through their investigation, if you look or compare your experience with them, you will find it matches what they are saying. Therefore, they're not a matter of faith or blind faith. They're a matter of pointing out what is already true. You just need to look through their eyes, live it long enough until you yourself confirm what the Shastras are saying. Therefore, the individual becomes the one who validates the validity or the authenticity of the scriptures. I show you a microscope and I say, if you look through this microscope, you will see a tiny particle. And you say, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Or say, you don't believe me because you're not looking. No, I don't believe you. Because I don't see it, I don't choose to look through this means of knowledge called a microscope. That means like that, the scriptures are like a microscope. You first look through the microscope of the scriptures, see it is true in the light of your own experience, and then you say, now I understand what they are saying. That's the glory of the scriptures. Next week, we will commence chapter 17. If chapter 16 was about pointing out theoretically what is qualities of the pure and what are qualities of the impure, chapter 17 will be about putting that into application in every facet of our life, from food to yajna to puja to what we worship, how we worship, and so many other facets of life. In other words, chapter 17 is about practice. And that concludes chapter 16 summary. Om Tat Sat iti Shrimad Bhagavad Gita tsu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambade Daiva Asura Sampad Vibhaga Yogo Nama Shodasho Dhyayaha. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.